Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to the Matrix of Mendacity Masterclass. This is episode 11. Thus far, we have discussed a variety of topics. We have discussed where power originates and comes from, being Geneva, Switzerland in general. And we've also discussed various individuals, figures, and we've discussed different technologies that are being used. Today, we're going to talk about the engine of power and how it all kind of sticks together and adapts itself to different areas. And so, I'm going to start off by doing two little readings that I would like to begin with, and then I will introduce my co-host. So, first, the video that I did about a year ago was titled "The Masters of the Secret Combination," and the little couple paragraphs I wrote go. Since the beginning of time, the priest class, as they've been called, have perfected or rather mastered their Mahan. They've mastered their art of gatekeeping secrets in order to gain. The Freemasons were originally a guild of stonemasons, the idea being that they had their own trade secrets, and so they all got together and formed a guild. They worked together to further gain. This was primarily done by keeping trade secrets. By incorporating elements of the mystery traditions of esotericism, it became a degreed system, a pyramid, where the higher up you get, the more secrets you're privy to, and the more entwined with the group you become. Within Freemasonry, the ritualistic oath taking ceremony functions kind of subconsciously. A pinky promise, for example, is one thing, but getting down on your knees with a noose around your neck and your peers gathered around while you swear upon a Bible on pain of death is an entirely different thing. If one day I do something stupid and I ask you to keep my secret and you oblige, sometime down the line when you do something stupid, you will be inclined to come back to me and say, I covered for you, now you cover for me. It's now a bond between those two people. Those two people are in it together. Shakespeare called this a tangled web because while it usually starts out innocently enough, before you know it, it spirals out of control and you're caught up in too many lies to keep track of. While groups such as Masonry may not be inherently evil, it is the inherent secrecy which makes it a formidable breeding ground for some of the worst among us to spin their tangled webs around those they so fittingly call hoodwinked, which is a Masonic term. And really quickly, I wanted to introduce this term kayfabe into the lexicon. It is a term used in professional wrestling, uh, the convention of portraying scripted matches, rivalries, and performer personas as authentic athletic competitions and personal conflicts, thereby upholding the pretense that outcomes arise from genuine skill and animosity rather than choreography and negotiation. It safeguards, there's that word again, trade secrets from outsiders and fans. Historically, kayfabe demanded rigorous adherence with wrestlers so that they could maintain character even off stage to avoid exposing the artifice. Violations could result in blacklisting or physical reprisals. And with that, let me welcome to the show my co-host, Mr. Juxtaposition. What do you think about those two terms, ideas?
Um, yeah, it's what makes the world go round. Is you get along by going along, and there's a Omerta code, maybe unwritten, of secrecy that goes with getting along to go along. There's a code of secrecy embedded in that because the program won't work if you tell other people. It's like magic. If you wanted to be a magician and you buy a magic book, then maybe you join the Magic Castle. They have magic clubs that you can join. And the first thing you learn before you become a magician is that you never tell the mechanics of the trick, of the illusion, because you're in the illusion business. Deception, averting people's eyes away from the bunny rabbit cage where you keep your bunny rabbit. When you pull your rabbit out of the hat, you never divulge the secrets of the trick. That's magic 101. You never tell. You never tell. So that applies to banking, that applies to murder, assassination, that applies to COVID, that applies to the COVID hoax, that applies to climate change and military weather warfare, misconstrued as a natural occurrence of people eating too much butter or having too many dairy cows. That this is climate change action. All right, so that's what makes the world go around in a pacification and control setting where Farmer Jones controls all the farm animals on his plantation. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, that was a really good follow up. I'm glad that you kind of just segued right into the natural idea of like stage magic, because that is the exact same topic. And so the reason that this is the subject of today's show and why I decided to go in this direction is because, a question that comes up, or I guess kind of a natural question that a person would come to is like, oh, has there always been the same person like conspiring over time, or same group? And necessarily, maybe, but this secrecy mechanism here that we are going to discuss today, back scratches, the idea of stage magic, look over here, not over there. That whole idea, omerta, is a word that does mean secrecy, the code of secrecy, and like organized crime. And so there are different words for secrecy and different ways to phrase it. But this has been the powering mechanism, the vehicle that has been present in every incarnation of the human husbandry matrix system over time. Um, and one term, and then I will let you give the other one that you had brought up, a term that I didn't read about yet, but I'll give the uh, definition for really quickly. Um, Spins. Spin is a acronym, means a segmented polycentric network. Here I will put the definition up so that everybody can see it. There we go. Spin. Segmented polycentric integrated network. What it is a type of fishnet, and so it's a network that can kind of wrap and connect to itself in kind of the manner that like fabric would. You can twist and contort it. Designed to replace visible bureaucratic hierarchies with a fluid, redundant, and seemingly leaderless, that's important, cellular structure. It's a camouflage that's used by the Illuminati and they, the hierarchy, enslaving you, to conceal their rigid pyramidal chain of command behind the illusion of spontaneous, decentralized social change. And then juxtaposition had another term that's very similar. So why don't you go ahead and introduce that, please?
Yeah, you're referring to the Rand Corporation's definition of
Yeah.
spin, where they put the society on the spin cycle, like a washing machine. Spin cycle, that means they paralyze the community. Rand Corporation uses the definition of spin as the movement, which is a deception amongst itself. They call it spin cycle. When you put the population on spin cycle, you hold them in place. They're kind of locked down. They're in a COVID lockdown. And then the movement is taken by the centralized authority, the Swiss bank authority, or whoever the controllers are. The while you have your society in spin cycle because of chaos, confusion, or a civil war, or ICE troops killing people in your town, that's spin cycle. Then you move us to the new dynamic reset, which would be real ID verification, which would be climate agenda detention camps known as Donald Trump Freedom Cities. In other words, the central authority moves forward with their agenda, their private agenda that they decided with no transparency and no discussion. And so the Rand Corporation says spin cycle has to do with whatever can paralyze a society into inaction, whether it be entertainment or fear-based or terrorism. They have dozens, if not hundreds, of ways to pacify and control the society, while the central authority then moves forward with their next step of progress. Now, I am more of a subscriber of SPLICE, SPLICE, because I think that the society that we live in today, through no fault of our own, born into, is SPLICE. SPLICE is segmented, polycentric, um, loosely integrated, coordinated entities. In other words, you have things like the FDA, and we have people like Anthony Fauci over at the Health Institute, the National Institute of Health, the NIH, and we have clowns like Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., who allegedly is an anti-vaxxer, or he's concerned about vaccine injuries. He's not. He's not concerned about it. He's married to a pro-COVID occultist, Cheryl Hines. So clearly, he's not interested in anything to do that's a departure from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and the World Health Organization, which is pro-vaccines. And that's 80 vaccines for children under 18 years old. 80. I think it's just been recently suggested it should be 78 or 79 vaccines. That's Robert Kennedy Jr. He's a proponent of vaccination inoculations. That means he's New World Order or Old World Order. He's goes along to get along. All right. So things like the Boy Scouts of America, the Del Moye Society for Kids, for Young America, Young Republicans, the Girl Scouts of America. Then when you get to be an adult, you can join maybe the Olympic Club, or the St. Francis Yacht Club, or some recreational type club, or you could join the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, become an advocate for politics. Anything to do with politics, you're moving into counterintelligence operations, because at the highest level, all of those organizations I mentioned, Boy Scouts, the LDS Mormons, the Catholic Church. Look at the Catholic Church. They're built on surveillance orders. They have the Order of the Jesuits, the Order of Jesuits. They have the Sacred Heart Order, the Order of the Sacred Heart. They have the Order of the Immaculate Heart, which is involved with the murder of Rosemary and Lena LaBianca. They handled surveillance for that murder. So you had Immaculate Heart Order, we had the Franciscans Order, we have the Dominican Order, we have the Jesuit Order, St. Ignatius de Loyola Order. Then we have the CIA is referred to as the company, or we have the MI6 in London, the MI6, which is their international intelligence agency. It's referred to as the firm. Then KGB, they have the order. And then Mossad, they're connected to Geneva, Switzerland. So is Israel. Israel was created in a conference room in Geneva. And then the Vatican, of course, they have to have their intelligence order that goes with the Vatican Bank, right? The banks are all intelligence facilities. Information. They call the Vatican order is referred to as the Royal Isthmus, which has to do with the Latin root term, meaning the head of a household. The head of that too is the Vatican Intelligence Agency, known as the Royal Isthmus. Back to you, Josh.
It's very interesting that you brought up the Jesuits, and the interesting part is that in the early days of the Jesuits, there was a term that was used. It was called the Company of Loyola. The Company of Loyola. Turns out that a lot of the founding members of the OSS, which came before the CIA, they were Knights of Malta, and they were all wearing like the little Knights of Malta crosses. And so, yes, the Vatican is a. I'm glad that you caught the epistemists thing, because I also saw that. And the loosely interconnected entities. Something came to mind. The logo for the Olympics is a bunch of interconnected rings. Right. And so let's see, what did you say? Loosely interconnected entities. They are circles of friends, because they are, at the end of the day, these are brotherhood and friend groups, as they would see themselves. And they are interconnected. They are a bunch of interconnected rings of friends. And so
they use the word coordinated.
Oh.
coordinated entities, coordinated entities. In other words, they're controlled. It's the
Mhm.
illusion of independence that the Boy Scouts of America have their own agenda and make their own decisions. At the same time, concurrently, the Girl Scouts of America make their own decisions. But the reality is, the Girl Scouts of America, the Boy Scouts of America, the YMCA, the YWCA, the Hoover Institute, the Brookings Institute, the Aspen Institute, the Claremont Institute, the Asian Institute. In fact, they are all following the same music, the marching music. They march to Geneva, Switzerland, which is the Knights Templar, which is the Knights of Malta. They are all, not only are they connected, they are fully coordinated by a central authority in Switzerland. So it's just a buffet, at the Outback Steakhouse, but you're stuck with the menu of the Outback Steakhouse. You are at the Geneva, Switzerland Steakhouse. And we can have a buffet of choices for you, like Coke or Pepsi, or aisle or window, or smoking or non smoking. But I'm just telling you, on this train, on this plane, on this bus, we're going to Basel, Switzerland. That's where this bus is going. Back to you,
Well,
John.
yeah, and you said you've got a choice, and interestingly enough, Coke versus Pepsi. Well, you have red versus blue. Domino's versus Pizza Hut. Oh, you have red versus blue. Democrat versus Republican. Oh, you have red versus. So it's like people have been trained to see the idea of you have choice A and choice B, and that is why I opened the show with that term kayfabe, because it's the idea that if you're going to have a wrestling show, if you want to do like WWE wrestling or something like that, well, what's the point of a show if you don't have a guy on that side and the guy on the other side so that they can fight each other? It
Well, to
is
make it entertaining, you have to inject conflict, whether it's a
yes.
story or a novel. If you're going to write a book. If you want to attract and hold the attention of the audience, you must introduce conflict into your show. Otherwise, it will not be considered entertaining. It will not be majestic, and your audience will lose interest quickly. That's all part of. That's why the dramatic arts are so intertwined with military tactics, and that's why Hollywood actors are an essential part of influencers within this. And by the way, it's not just two choices, black versus white, Coke versus
Mhm.
Pepsi. A political system like Italy, you can have 6, 7, 8 different political parties. It's the same thing. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you have six choices or if you have, Democrats versus Republican, Biden versus Trump, or Kamala Harris versus Trump. It doesn't matter. You could have a dozen Kamala Harrises. In the end, it doesn't matter because neither Kamala Harris nor Donald Trump is in charge of Geneva, Switzerland, United Nations, Terra Swarm, human augmentation, and DNA Frankenstein monster turning humans into hard drives tethered to the cloud 24/7. That's not a program that Donald Trump is directly involved in. He's just a clown on the stage. So is Kamala Harris. She's a clown. She's word salad. Nobody knows what she means or
It was
says.
very bad.
So, all right, what have you got there, Josh?
Well, as we were talking about, and again, this is a prime example of the way that studying and understanding and just looking at words is beneficial because you have, for instance, let's say a story arc or a character arc. Well, you have electrical arc too, and for an electrical arc, you need to bring two leads together, a positive and a negative. And what happens when you bring those two leads together is it produces extreme energy. And so the same thing is exactly what's going on in the dynamic of kayfabe or power is that you have to have this joining of opposites, and that is what kind of allows the energy to uh, appear for them to harvest it. You need to create the energy and then harvest it. That's what they are interested in. And I intend to follow this up in another video. But the idea of all of this secret keeping, and it's harvesting. They refer to this as energy harvesting, but this idea of secrecy for gain and secret oaths and swearing on pain of death, that actually is very much connected to the veneration of Cain, who was a harvester. They refer and see that deity as the deity of harvest, using and harvesting from other people, parasitic almost.
Right. Well, the reason that they do this hive mentality, it's a beehive mentality, honeybee hive, is you create a universal construct out of a disoriented, independent system, and it's physical and it's psychological both. It's both physical and it's psychological. So you can be adapted. This system of spin or splice. In my case, I believe that we have splice in play. Um, but the point is, it doesn't really matter. Spin and splice are interchangeable. Is that you can apply it to politics? You can create Truth Social at Rumble. You can create the Democratic Party. You can create the Black Panthers. You can create the Symbionese Liberation Army. You have paramilitary groups. You can have the Fountain of the World Church. You can have the Rainbow Colony with the Winona Ryder. You can have the Child of God and bring in, Joaquin Phoenix and his and River Bottom and River Bottom Phoenix and Joaquin Phoenix. They were members of an occult called the Child of God, right? You do know that a lot of your Hollywood stars were raised in cults, right? You do know that, right? Winona Ryder, her name is Laura Horowitz. Her name is Laura Horowitz. And you know that the conservative talk show host, Jon Stewart, his name is Leibowitz. He's Leibowitz, John Leibowitz. Okay. And Oliver Stone, he's Oliver Silverstein. Okay, so don't believe a single person you see on television, okay? They either are fake or they have a fake name or their show is fake or both. Typically, their show is always fake and their name is probably fake. And that go hand in hand. You can be in a religious cult for children like the LDS Mormon Church. That's a perfect example of a cult. There's not a millimeter's worth of difference between the Mormon Church and the Catholic Church and the Church of Scientology and the Church of Satan or the Temple of Set or the Rainbow Colony or the Fountain of the World Church with Krishna Venta, who's Jewish, who presents as some non-Jewish person from San Francisco. They're completely fraudulent. Every one of those religions is a fraudulent based scheme. The Catholic Church is 100% fraudulent. The Mormon Church, with their Mitt Romney and George Romney and George Scott Romney and women getting tossed off of 5-floor parking garages and children like Michael Blossel being thrown off the 8th floor of his apartment across the street from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, but in Los Angeles. Marie Osmond's son was thrown off the 8th floor balcony. His name is Michael Blossel. He was murdered, okay? And anybody who says it's a suicide is a bald-faced liar, okay? 18-year-old boys do not take swan dives at 9 o'clock at night in front of the Federal Reserve Bank. They get murdered, okay? And any Mormon who denies that is a bald-faced liar to be ignored, all right? So my point is that we have actors in the Matrix of Mendacity. The Matrix of Mendacity is a mesh network, just like the NATO planes that are dumping aluminum chalk over my head. That's creating smart dust. Smart dust are MIMs and MIMOs, micro electronic devices, which are sensors. They can both receive and send signals. Some of the particles are suspended in the air for weeks or months. Some come down to earth and lodge in your lawn or your soil or your water. And most of it ends up in people through on their skin or in their eyeballs, tethering them to the cloud as if they were a smartphone. And everyone walking around cluelessly is in fact being augmented and having their genes augmented by the neuromodulation pulsing of this system called the mesh, because the mesh is a series of nodes on the network. No node is that important, not when you have trillions of nodes. And that's what these social organizations are. If the Black Panther movement doesn't gain traction, that's okay, because we can have the what's the inverse of that? We have the Proud Boys. So you get the
Yeah.
Proud Boys, and you got the Black Panthers or Black Lives Matter, and then you got the LBGQ movement or whatever the hell they call themselves, Rainbow Coalition. We got Jesse James, Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know, he supports the Rainbow Coalition. Hey, so does Daniel Ellsberg. He works for the Rand Corporation. Do you really think that I should hitch my wagon to the LBGT, diversity, equity, inclusion movement led by Daniel Ellsberg? He lied to you about the Pentagon Papers. He lied to you about the Vietnam War. And so now you're going to believe Daniel Ellsberg of Harvard University, who is a creation of the Harvard University, 6 years he went to school there. He is a complete fraud, all right? And so does everyone who graduated from Harvard. They're all frauds, every single one of them, along with Stanford and MIT and Noam Chomsky and Victor Davis Hanson and Jeffrey Sachs and Anthony Napolitano, who did not go to Harvard, but spends all his time with people who did go to Harvard, like Steve Bannon or Jeffrey Epstein, who Steve Bannon spends hours with Jeffrey Epstein, or Noam Chomsky, who spends time with Jeffrey Epstein, or Woody Allen, who spends time with him. And apparently everybody spends time with Jeffrey Epstein, every person on the planet, including Donald Trumpster. So the thing is that they're all nodes on the network. One of them by themselves is irrelevant, because you see they have redundancy and resilience is baked into the system. That's Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. It's called the resiliency. It's the sustainability system. So sustainability means reliability. Reliability means backup, redundancy. We have that with the mesh network now to augment humans and pacify and control them and tether them to the cloud. And we have that with all of our governance. We're governed out of Geneva, Switzerland, Central Bank Authority out of Geneva, Switzerland. And they do it by using fake political leaders voted for in a rigged system called democracy. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, okay, Bill Clinton, Obama. They're all nodes on the network. They can be assassinated, thrown under the bus at any moment. It makes no difference whatsoever. Richard Nixon ran on, peace with dignity and leaving Vietnam, and then he waged the war for another 10 years or 8 years, whatever it was, till he got thrown out because of Watergate. We had Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford, all with their fingers on the Vietnam War, ran by Switzerland. It's run by Switzerland. And you got billionaires like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Laurene Powell, the widow of Steve Jobs, Laurene Powell Jobs, Mark Cuban, Joe LeCobe of Kleiner Perkins, all these pseudo billionaires telling you what's coming and our banking system is going to fail. They're just clowns on the stage. They're just clowns. They have no authority. Mark Andreessen isn't in charge. He's associated with California Forever. Well, that's just a FEMA camp. They under a different name. Donald Trump, Freedom City. Kamala Harris, Liberty City. FEMA camp. Prison detention camp, you dummies. Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, you can listen to them. The academics, people like Larry Summers, Steve Bannon. He's a clown. He's a clown from Georgetown. He's a Jesuit clown who went to Harvard. Okay, so you've got, Klaus Schwab, Christine Lagarde, Robert McNamara, Tom Klassen, head of the World Banks, and they're part of United Nations. The IMF and the World Bank is Geneva, Switzerland. It's NATO. That's who's running the world out of Geneva, Switzerland. To create this theatrical show that Larry Ratfink and Steven Schwartzman and Jamie Dimon of Chase, that Dean Jacobson, Doug Leone of Sequoia Capital, Dean Jacobson of Excel KKR, JJ Cardwell, and Aaron Valente are running the show. They're not running the show. They're clowns on the circus. They're participants, nodes on a mesh network. A mesh network, which is also called spin or splice. Back to you, Josh.
I'm really glad that you made the connection to mesh networking because that's exactly what this is. And while you were doing that, had the chance to find a little bit that I wanted to present. This is from the book Behold a Pale Horse, the first chapter. Talks about secret societies. Starting here, that this can only mean that these societies are working not against established authority, but rather they're working for established authority. In fact, it could be said to actually be the established authority itself. That can only apply, of course, where the secret society makes up the majority or entirely of any people which it affects. Secret societies, in fact, mirror many facets of ordinary life. There's always an exclusivity of membership with the resultant importance attached to being or becoming a member. This is found in all human endeavors, even those which are not secret, such as football teams or country clubs. This exclusivity of membership is actually one of the secret society's most powerful weapons. There is the use of signs, passwords, and other tools. They have always performed valuable functions in man's organizations everywhere, the stated reason almost always different from the real reason for the society's existence is important. It can be anything, but is usually fraternal, it's a brotherhood, and is found in all pressure groups wherever people congregate. The camaraderie is especially important. Sharing hardships or secrets has always been a special thrill to men. No one has who has ever undergone the rigors of boot camp is ever likely to forget the special feeling of belonging and comradeship that was shared between the victims of the drill sergeant or company commander. It is an emotion born of initiation. The most potent tool of any secret society is the ritual and myth surrounding initiation. These special binding ceremonies have very deep meaning for the participants. Initiation performs several functions which make up the heart and soul of any true secret society. Like boot camp, the initiation into the armed forces, the important aspects of human thought that are universally compelling are merged to train and maintain the efforts of a group of people to operate in a certain direction. Initiation bonds the members together in mysticism. Neophytes, which are initiates, gain knowledge of a secret, giving them special status. The ancient meaning of neophyte is planted anew or reborn. A higher initiation is in reality a promotion, inspiring loyalty and the desire to move up to the next rung. The goals of the society are reinforced, causing the initiated to act towards those goals in everyday life. That brings about a change in the political and social action of the member. The change is always in the best interest of the goals of the leaders of the secret society. The leaders are called adepts. This can best be illustrated by the soldier trained to follow orders without thinking. The result is often the wounding or death of the soldier for the realization of the commander's goal, which may or may not be good for the overall community. Initiation is a means of rewarding ambitious men who can be trusted. You will notice that the higher the degree of initiation, the fewer the members who possess the degree. This is not because the other members are not ambitious, but because of a process of very careful selection is being conducted. A point is reached where no effort is good enough without a pull up by the higher members. Most members never proceed beyond this point and never learn the real secret purpose of the group. The frozen member from that point on serves only as a part of the political power base, as indeed he has always done. You may have guessed by now that the initiation is a way to determine who can and cannot be trusted.
Yeah.
And this I'll leave off with this because this was interesting. A verse from Proverbs that says, "The unthrifty man and the wicked man walketh with a froward mouth. He maketh a sign with his eyes, and he signifieth with his feet. He instructioneth with his fingers. Lewd things are in his heart. He imagineth evil at all times, and raiseth up contentions. Therefore shall his destruction come speedily. he shall be destroyed suddenly without recovery. And that's Proverbs 6:12-15. And the Masons absolutely do speak with their feet and their fingers and signs and passwords. And so this has literally been around forever, probably thousands of years, if not more.
Well, those are just all pacification and control techniques.
Yeah,
I think what people forget is pacification control applies to all elements of our society, from the bottom rung, which is the working class, people who use their hands, to toil in the fields or to toil in the shop, repair automobiles, repair machines, build things, builders. Those are at the lower levels. I can assure you at the top, a management, executive management and above, they're not building anything. They're just going through the system. They will be replaced by another person of similar indoctrination training. But you see, there you can use fear and terrorism to immobilize a system. That's what Rand Corporation considers to be what they call building grassroots innovation. In other words, a bunch of men go in a room and decide something amongst themselves, and it could be right or it could be wrong. It could be illegal or it could be malicious. It doesn't make any difference. They decide. Then they go out and they instill fear into people so that their default status, problem, reaction, solution, PRS, then they herd the clueless sheep away from where they were and they resettle them in a new place, like a FEMA camp, like a Trump Freedom City. And they'll say, because of climate change, because of bad temperature, because the farm crops won't grow, we're going to move you to where the food is. We're going to move you to where the food is. We're going to move you to where the fresh water is, in a prison, in a walled prison. But people won't voluntarily do it. So you trick them through Houdini magic tricks, through structured events, staged events, with crisis actors, with actors from Hollywood, and with actors from banking. You'll have Bill Gates, you'll have Larry Ellison, you'll have Steve Ballmer, Eric Schmidt, the usual clowns who have no authority over their own businesses. None, zero, nada. And they will tell you, oh, it's safe there, don't worry, everything will be fine. They're lying. There's a cremation there and there's a cremation to care ceremony there. And in between waiting for your execution date, you'll be milked like Betsy, or Bessie, the dairy cow. You'll be milked and harvested your energy. So this is how the world really works. In other words, people lie. They create fake and staged events to reposition people in society to another place. I mean, how do you think immigration is an issue? It's run out of Geneva, Switzerland. All immigration is run out of centralized control, United Nations, out of Geneva, Switzerland. They control world hunger. They control world farming. So they control climate change, and they can stimulate climate change with military airplane attacks and assaults. It's not climate change. It's a military attack. It's a NATO attack. So if there is an immigration problem in the United States, that would be laid at the feet of the United Nations, because they're the ones that are moving people from Africa, from India, from South America to other places in the world, like London or New York or Minnesota. That's all planned. Our economy is planned. It's fake. We have a fake economy. You have a fake stock market. You have a fake gold market, silver market, commodities market. Derivatives are a way of using steroids to exaggerate the effects of trading individual securities. You can juke it. You can juice it by using put and call options, which is all derivatives are. They're synthetic. In other words, they don't represent the actual thing. They represent a purchase or a sale of the actual thing. See, it's an option, meaning that it's a right to take action or a right to expire out of position. It's not a tree. It's tree bark, but it's not the tree. But you have a right to cut down the tree if you own some of this tree bark. All right, so everything in our world is rigged and fixed. Gold, silver, land, water, airspace, military, it's all totally controlled. And so this goes to SPLICE, this goes to SPIN, this goes to the mesh network, this goes to pseudo leaders like Donald Trump or Emmanuel Macron, or Jennifer Doudna, who has been bestowed, her latest title is Chancellor of Biomedicine at University of California, Berkeley. And she is not a medical doctor and she does not see patients. But at Berkeley, she is a Chancellor of Biomedicine, knowing nothing about medicine. She knows about how to use neuromodulation, molecular engineering to turn human beings into Frankenstein zombies. That's the only thing she knows, is how to augment, disable, and retard and promote senile dementia in children. That's Jennifer Doudna's PhD from Harvard University, is about electrical engineering of human beings. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with the fear is the key driving factor to the secrecy. The fear is adapted over time to different groups of people, different societies,
Yeah,
different sectors.
but further up the food chain, they don't use fear. They use better house, bigger house. They use, did you want to live in Atherton,
Fear of
or
missing
you want
out.
to live in, Holmby Hills, or you want to live in the Hamptons, right? So that's like in the club, stay in the club, move up in status within the club.
Fear of missing out, though. It's, maybe, sure, I mean, everything you said is valid, but also let's look at that on the inverse, almost fear of
In
losing
business,
those.
they call it anticipation of gain versus fear of loss.
Um, and indeed, and so one of the key things with fear is used to knock a person kind of into a moment of chaos, and so the person reaches out for meaning, and then they insert this new meaning as a new normal. They say, okay, well, here is the solution to the problem, that, as you said, the dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. Create the problem, sell the solution, as they always sell the solution. um, but
Right. Well, and so, for example, everything that Noam Chomsky was associated with at MIT, which is a military research facility, is applied linguistics. Applied linguistics is lying right to people's face, but having them believe you're truthful. It's pathological lying. That's applied linguistics. What Noam Chomsky represents is mendacity, balderdash, and poppycock. He is the poster boy of falsehoodness. He is the falsehood chairman of the board of the Falsehood Corporation, and he can go cry to Jeffrey Epstein about it if he doesn't like my description of him, because he's one of Jeffrey's pals on the Lolita Express. So the thing is that it's about altering the definitions, like Bill Clinton. It depends on what your definition of is. Well, that means that everything's variable, nothing's fixed. So that means ethics, schmethics. That's what that means. Noam Chomsky is the person who is unethical. He's an unethical person. He promotes unethical behavior. He promotes falsehoods about COVID, the COVID hoax. He promotes bald-faced lies like the COVID and the COVID hoax, and the vaccine, which is a bio weapon. It is a biological weapon designed to tether you to the cloud. That makes it a weapon system, part of Raytheon and Missile Guidance and Lockheed's program. So if you pimp out the vaccine, you're pimping for Lockheed and Raytheon and Bell Nuclear Labs. That's Noam Chomsky. He's a pimp for the military industrial complex. And he worked for a military complex company that collects billions of dollars from the Department of Energy every year, called Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So you believe nothing Noam Chomsky says, believe nothing comes out of his pie hole. Okay. And don't believe anything comes out of Doug Leone's pie hole either. He went to MIT. Or Sam Bankman French fried. He went to MIT also. So if you don't like Noam Chomsky, hey, he's a disciple of Samuel Bankman French fried and Doug Leone. They're all three bugs in a rug, those three cohorts. Thick as thieves they are. Thick as thieves they are. They're all partners. Doug Leone is the sponsor of Samuel Bankman Fried,
it's
who is a believer in Noam Chomsky. So those three are criminals at MIT. But go over to Harvard. There's no shortage of criminals over there. Go over to Stanford. There's no shortage of criminals over there, right? So
The
sophistry and ethics schmethics, meaning that it will be ethical to murder people at age 32 if that's what the cult wants. If they want to euthanize people at age 32 or 33, they certainly can. You could go ask Janis
you
Joplin. She was euthanized at age
you
27.
have to word it right.
And it's wording is not really the correct term. Sophistry is the correct term because it's lying. And they use words and the morphology of words, which is the dialectic, to change the definition of words. They alter or add the definition of words so that they can lie to you while maintaining a straight face. Back to you, Josh, with sophistry.
Well, it's funny that you brought up the term "thick as thieves," and I actually do know where that comes from, and that is heavily related to this topic. Thick as thieves, at least probably one of the origins of that. There's a term. I know that it came up in the study of the term Mahonism and secret combinations. There were Gadantian robbers, and they implemented the secret combination, uh, and it's a kind of like a biblical, pseudo biblical tale within the Book of Mormon. It talks about groups of robbers or thieves who use this tactic of secret combinations, keeping secrets to gain. So that is thick as thieves. It's probably where that came from, or one of. But it's interesting that you brought that up. Yeah,
COVID is the best recent example. There are thousands of examples, but everything to do with COVID, while it was presented in media, was sophistry. Safe and effective vaccine, shelter in place, face diapers. There's no scientific follow the science. There's no science to do with wearing a
yeah.
cotton face mask or a chin mask. You'll notice for all the sports you watched on television, the coaches would wear chin masks, and the athletes,
Well,
whether they're on bicycles or playing basketball, they're not wearing any face diaper of any kind, because you know why? Face diapers don't work for the flu or sore throats. They don't work. So it wouldn't work for COVID. And it didn't work for COVID. Because look, you have people getting double boosted and vaxxed and wearing face diapers and social distancing, and then
they
they have
changed the
long
words.
COVID. So if they have long COVID and people like me who do none of the above, I am non-compliant. Don't wear a face diaper, don't social distance, and don't get sick. So you can't have a pandemic when not everybody's getting sick. And you can't have a pandemic when no one is dying. You can't have a pandemic globally simultaneously in Rome, Italy, Paris, France, the Wuhan lab, Beijing, Hong Kong, in Singapore, and Sydney, Australia. It is literally impossible to have a pandemic going on simultaneously. It's possible to have electronic radiation poisoning because everybody's got pollution in the air, cell phone towers, smart meters, ring cameras, mobile phones, and cell towers. And then you can radiate and give people ringing in their ears, extreme headaches. You can give them spatial confusion, senile dementia, fatigue syndrome, nausea, flu-like symptoms. That's radiation poisoning. That's Havana syndrome. That's got nothing to do with no COVID hoax. And COVID stands for Certification of Vaccine Identity Artificial Intelligence. That's what that acronym COVID-19 means. It means you're tethered to the cloud and we have your real ID. And we have your real ID. We have your real ID. You've been tagged like Bessie, the dairy cow. That's what that means. COVID means, are you a dairy cow compliant or not? Just that simple. Back to you, Josh. That's sophistry.
Yeah,
That's lying to people, to their
yeah.
face.
That was a word that you had told me about. I didn't know really about it until you had introduced it.
Salesmanship use a lot of sophistry.
The
Go into a car dealership and they'll give you a education on sophistry.
Well, the whole thing about trust the science, that was circular reasoning, because we trust the science because the science works. Well, why does the science works? It's because we trust the science.
Right.
It's
Well, the science is that you have
circular.
100 different approaches to solve a problem.
Hmm.
So there is not one solution. So if you really follow the science, you don't follow face masking or social distancing. Now we have another problem. We have forest fires and we have aluminum chalk being dumped out of planes with plastic in it. Now, will a face diaper work for that? No, it won't. You need to wear a hazardous mask uniform. Do you see people walking around with full hazardous mask uniforms? No. So essentially, every person on the planet wearing a face diaper, not wearing a face diaper, vaccinated, not vaccinated, they're all being exposed to human augmentation because, and they've lied again, right? Noam Chomsky hasn't announced that we should be concerned about the military planes over our town. So by Noam Chomsky remaining silent, he is again bald-faced lying to us, bald-faced lying by his silence. His silence is deafening.
Hmm.
And so is Donald Trump. His silence is deafening. Donald Trump won't stop talking about invading Greenland or Venezuela, but he doesn't mention anything about the fact that all of the American people are augmented and being hooked up to the cloud. And we're going to have the Super Bowl, which they knew who was going to be in the Super Bowl back in September. They already knew who was going to be in the Super Bowl. So the whole season of the NFL was one big entertainment fraudulent scheme. And if you think that you can't rig the Tour de France, you're delusional. Of course you can rig the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong won the race 7 times. There's no way that he could have won it one time if it wasn't fixed. All right, back to you, Josh.
Yeah, it really it is a process that is to be kind of repeated, and this is farming. The process is a way to farm energy, people, resources. It's very flexible in many ways. The whole mesh idea is flexible, but then the way that this, what it does is it will adapt to genes. Over time, it will look at a population. Different populations have different, sensitivities, different genetic predispositions, etc. And so it will insert itself, it will infiltrate that population. It will learn about it over time, and it will adapt the strategy to that predisposition, to a culture, and so that's how it survives over time. And then the rest of it is really this brotherhood, circle of friends, where it's that we understand each other, that you and I, they say we're on the square. What that means is that you and I are fair and square, like we're cool with each other. We understand what each other is saying. If you say something, then we're cool. We can say it. We're not going to get mad at each other. We're not going to argue. We're level with each other. It means that we are on the same intellectual level. Flush, plumb, like they use these terms because they do have almost a symbolic, esoteric idea. So everything that's right is plumb, square, level, and flush. And so you can interpret that in a couple of different ways, but plumb to hang straight. If we're going to all hang out, let's be straight and not be weird and do weird things with each other. Let's be flush. Let's fit in our place and everybody do their jobs. Yeah.
We do the fist pump and we do the fist knocking called respect.
Mm-hmm.
Respect. That's
Yeah.
another pacification and control bonding ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Respect. We respect each other. We don't disagree. We just respect.
And what happens is that past a point, you will find that you can't, like, for instance, you're not fulfilled with people who don't understand you, and only certain people will understand you. They will, oh, this guy is smart enough to understand the things that I also have to go through, and so we form a bond because we can actually um, talk about it. And that's why it's like I can't talk about that with somebody who hasn't gone through it. That's where this comes from. Then
No, and I
the
agree with
trauma
you.
is used.
All the stupid and lazy people, they should be in their own club by themselves, alone. And I shouldn't be included in that. I don't want to be a member of a stupid and lazy society. So I'm all about membership. With privilege comes membership. With membership comes privileges. So if I don't have to listen to stupid people I benefit, okay, because I don't find it a good use of my time.
With that, so with that being said, I now that we, I guess, let's have you present your Bohemian Grove stories formally to the show, because I don't know if we've gone through it like on the show. I mean, you've told me a few
That
times,
should be
but
separate. That should be a separate show. That's
okay.
it's too it's subtle. It's over time. It's not like a one-time thing, and there's context. Contextual framework has to be established. So, just needless to say that I've been invited to some private parties and events. Hijinks night being an event. That was a private party and an event, and it involved music. Also, music was a part of it. But it was fun. It was interesting. Would I want to do it on a regular basis over 20, 30 years? No, of course not. I'd be bored out of my mind. Just like I don't think I want to go to the opening of the opera every single year. Now, I
Well,
did go for the Opera in the Park picnic, but the reason I did that was one, it was my birthday and I was getting a birthday cake. So I had selfish reasons. Number two, it was a really fun party and I got to see my aunt and her friends. So, but I'm just saying that the main genesis of me going to Opera in the Park in Sharon Meadow in Golden Gate Park, today you know it as Robin Williams Field, but it was William named after a private banker in San Francisco who became the governor of Nevada when they discovered silver and the Comstock lode. Then who becomes the governor of the silver state? A banker in San Francisco. Anyway, that's where Opera in the Park kicks off. That's where Timothy Leary in January 1967 spoke the infamous words, tune in, turn on, drop out, which is what people are doing today with respect to human augmentation. They've tuned in to steroid sports and believing in people wearing laundry, because none of the athletes are from the cities that they represent. And the San Francisco 49ers do not play football in San Francisco. They don't even play it in San Francisco County. They play it in Mountain View in Santa Clara County. So they're in a different county, in a different city, in a stadium that's a number 13 address. They play in a number 13 address for the DePortola family, Eddie DeBartola family. And what I'm telling you is nothing about the San Francisco 49ers is correct and true. Nothing about the Golden State Warriors are connected to. Who owns them? Well, Joe LaCobe of Kleiner Perkins, a private banker who lives in Atherton. He owns a team that plays in Mission Bay, San Francisco, which they don't call the San Francisco basketball team. They call it the Golden State Warriors. But the owner is a private banker on Sand Hill Road, and I'll be specific, 2750 Sand Hill Road is his address. If you want to send him a postcard or a love letter, Joe LaCobe. And he's not the only person involved. There's Peter Goober and some other people. But billionaire bankers own a basketball team. You know, like Steve Ballmer of Microsoft, he owns the Los Angeles Clippers. Why would billionaires like Mark Cuban and Steve Ballmer and Joe LaCobe and Peter Goober, why would they want to own NBA, which stands for National Bastards Association? Why would they want to own teams with big, tall guys with uniforms who weren't born in and didn't grow up in the cities they represent? Pacification and control is why. Because basketball and soccer, World Cup soccer, and Olympic sports are important for people to gamble on and to become addicted to and to waste people's time and then to deliver the message to that audience. It creates an audience, and you can sell commercial products and deliver woke messaging like transgender agenda or DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion agendas, which they do present to you at the Olympics. They will present to you at the Super Bowl. They do present during NBA basketball games. That these are the tenets of belief, the foundations and pillars of our society, which they are not. They're cooked up by the Hoover Institute or the Brookings Institute or the Haspen Institute or the Tavistock Institute or the Frankfurt School, and then they are approved in Geneva, Switzerland. And then, and only after that process, are they presented to you at the Super Bowl or the Olympics or at an NBA basketball game. They're presenting manufactured consent by think tanks that work for bankers in Switzerland. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was watching last night. It was, I guess, like a TV program, probably from the early '80s. They were talking about cable, and they're like this idea of two-way cable, and they were basically predicting everything that we're going through now. And they're like, yeah, we should, like, do we really want to be jacked into the system by this cable into our house and tune in, turn on, drop out? So this cable is delivering to people this burst of dopamine almost, and so they're keeping everybody kind of suspended in this nice pool of dopamine and stuff to do, that tune in, turn on, drop out. They're keeping people suspended in that. And the end goal, now that we have a little bit of hindsight and we're living in 2026, is to eventually, once people are addicted and they have to be suspended, they have to be jacked in, they can't not be jacked in, they're going to switch the jack for the CBDC, because the CBDC is quite literally a almost pure synthetic form of dopamine is how they're going to use it. They're going to use it just like
Right.
a dopamine in the human brain, but they're going to use it in the societal context.
Well, it's the end of humanity, because then you've crossed over, you're in transhumanity. And as soon as you're in transhumanity, you're not a human anymore. So that's what they're going to, they're using all the natural um, organisms of a human, and they weaponize them all, and then they turn it against you. And you're like an infinite loop of watching a porn.
Mhm.
You're just watching a porn
That's
over and
cybernetics.
over and over. And then they've completely euthanized you. You're not dead, but you mentally, you're dead. You have senile dementia, advanced senile dementia, because you're unable to extricate you from the situation that through your addiction process, you've found yourself now imprisoned, not only in a 15-minute city, but within your bedroom of a tiny apartment within a Donald Trump Freedom City. So really, you are in solitary confinement in a state prison or penitentiary, federal penitentiary, state prison, or the county jail, but you're in solitary. You're by yourself alone. They'll give you a Meta helmet and a Netflix cable service, and they'll give you DoorDash tray will come through the slot in your door 3 times a day. It really won't be food. It'll be synthetic food, but you're not really a human. You're synbio. You're synbio, synthetic biology. You're a synthetic biology. So you don't need real food. You can eat garbage that we put on the tray because you're Bessie the cow and we're milking you every day. That's their plan. That's the agenda, United Nations 2030. That's what the PowerPoint presentations delivered just a few days ago at Davos, Switzerland. They're delivering the crypto world where it's everything's going to be tokenized economy. And they already acknowledged 98% of everything they're going to inventory on the planet Earth, 98% will have no economic value at all. In other words, some used garden tool that you've had for 20 years sitting in your garage, they're going to tokenize that. It has no value, but if you pick it up to use it against one of the ICE soldiers in your neighborhood, one of the black mask wearing ICE guys, they will have to give you a terahertz bullet and neutralize you, because you're using a worthless trowel to potentially attack a NATO troop. They're not going to allow you to attack NATO soldiers, which is your sheriff, which is your police. They're NATO. They work for NATO. I'm just trying to save people time. Your sheriff works for NATO. In the words of a Santa Barbara County sheriff, we put out the don't come near me hand, talk to the hand sign. He said, he uttered the words, I am not here for you. I am not here for you. Truer words were never spoken
No, right?
from a
So true.
deputy of the Santa Barbara County. You know, it's the Neverland Ranch people, the people who handle the Neverland Ranch in Santa Ynez, California, next to Fess Parker, who lives on Fox and Canyon, and his property backs up to the Neverland Ranch. So when you talk about Michael Jackson and the Neverland Ranch, you're talking about Disneyland. That the contractors that work at Disneyland, they worked on that project. Sycamore Valley Ranch. That branch is called Sycamore Valley Ranch, and that's Disney company. And what is Fess Parker, who shares the hill? Fess Parker is on one side of the hill, Michael Jackson on the other. Well, he was a Disney actor his whole career.
Mm.
Disney actor. Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Fess Parker, he's living on Disney property. They let him grow a vineyard of grapes. He's on Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch. Don't you get it? Michael Jackson and Daniel Boone, they're the same person on the same property.
See, it, the whole it is the whole idea of this token ledger thing is dangerous historically, and almost any uh, pantheon of gods. There's always like a scribe. There's one whose job is to sit there and record everything that happens and everybody who's born or dies, whatever. And the reason for that is the same reason they built all of the monuments and big statues and stuff of the king, was because after they die, the only way that they live on is through the memory, the legacy of who they were, and so they build these statues to remind themselves in while they're living, and then to remind everybody after they're dead who they were. But you see, what is the difference? Like, did a person ever exist if there's no trace of them and their name's never written down anywhere? And so that's why there's always a scribe to write down everybody who's ever existed, saying that those people have been given a life. And so what they're doing with the real ID and putting everything, they want to have, they want to control the scribe. They want to control the list, everybody who's ever lived, everybody who's ever died. And so in 1984, you have an unperson. They call them an unperson, somebody who's been disappeared, deleted from existence. There's no writing, no trace of them anywhere. So did they ever live? Did were they ever a person? That's going on in China right now as we speak. And so they want complete and utter control of that. And so if they do it, then they will have the ability to completely delete people like they never existed. You've never lived because you don't have any ID anywhere. All traces of you have been deleted. That is what they're able to do with the universal ledger.
Well, that's what they'll do when, by the time we're in 2030, is they will push a button between now and then that will either lock you in to the virtual world of digital reality, which is the metaverse. You'll be locked inside of it, which is a prison. The Matrix of Mendacity, which we just covered the other night, Josh, the metaverse. The metaverse it's all a game. It's a thought experiment. We're in the Matrix. The Matrix is a prison. The Matrix is techno enslavement. It's a penitentiary. And I'm telling you, it's a farm, and you'll be milked like a dairy cow on the farm. But the farm is a penitentiary. So that'll be the metaverse. And there'll be lots of entertainment and rules that you will follow, or you will get declining privileges. If you don't agree to get a real ID and you don't agree to enter the prison, then you'll be locked out of it. And so you think, well, that's good. I didn't want to be in there anyway. Well, it's a problem because you won't be able to get water, and you won't be able to get food, and you won't be able to conduct any legitimate banking activity because your bank will not recognize you as a compliant citizen. You will not be a citizen of the world.
This is happening in China already.
There will be no United States. You'll have a governor of your Hunger Game. You'll have a governor who will report directly to Switzerland. There will be no, right now it's set up that we have a president of the United States, and then we have governors of the 50 states, and then you have city mayors. The city mayors have no authority whatsoever and are not participating in the climate change agenda other than to go with whatever Geneva says we agree with. They're not deciding it. They're following it. They put the electrical charging stations for the electrical cars up because Switzerland said so. Not because you voted for it. There's no democracy. There's no discussion at your city council. If you don't believe me, go down there. You will be given a hook. They'll give you 90 seconds and then you're off. And you can't talk about human augmentation and DNA and airplane traffic over your town or the elimination of electric cars. They're not going to stand for that because you don't live in a democracy, and they don't want to hear your complaints. And they'll arrest you if you put signs up that says stupid people get real ID. They'll arrest you for that. But you know what? Stupid people get real ID. That's really stupid to do that. It's really stupid. But the thing is, oh well, I have all these assets to protect. Do you trust the people that you're giving your real ID to? Don't you know that when you're hooking up your bank accounts to real ID, your bank can steal all your money and you can't do anything about it. They're going to close your branch. It's going to be closed. Then you're going to be pounding sand trying to call the HAL 9000 helpline to get your $100 million of cash back. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to tell you that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And you'll be happy because they'll tranquilize you with some e-pharmacy morphine so you don't feel any pain anymore. Because they're going to neutralize your brain. You're not even going to remember that you had $100 million of real estate. By the time they're done with you, they just push a button on you. They can kill you. They can treat you with precision medicine, which is code for tethering you to the cloud and neuromodulating your brain using Jennifer Doudna's CRISPR Therapeutics, which is a weapon. It's a weapon system paid for by DARPA, the Department of Defense. If you don't think that Jennifer Doudna isn't a soldier, then look at where she got her financing from. Military NATO forces. That's who financed. It's in Zug, Switzerland, for crying out loud. That's near Davos. That's where the headquarters for CRISPR Therapeutics is. That's the headquarters for central bank digital currency. That's the headquarters for cryptocurrency, where Jennifer Doudna's CRISPR Therapeutics is. So don't you get it? They're going to hook up your DNA bone marrow to your bank account. And if you don't comply, you'll be locked out of their prison, living in a creek bed and hunted by drones and robotic dogs until you're dead. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, only stupid people get real ID. This is already happening in China, and I'm going to show you this. It's like a 1 minute clip because it is.
So the latest in this dystopian outrage that is now all of China apparently is I once again cannot buy food. A couple days ago, my uncle and my cousin helped me get a cell phone that is linked to a Chinese bank card so that I could buy anything. But now, apparently, it has been flagged for some reason, and I have to pass facial recognition identity verification, which is insane. Because all I want to do is just spend my gift card balance on this debit card. I can't believe I'm doing this. I have to open my mouth. Oh my god. Terrifying. Oh. And of course, because it was my cousin who set this up for me, I did not pass verification. I guess it's a good thing that the Chinese app is not racist. But now I once again can't buy anything.
This is being very. It's they're hiding this, and they're doing a good job at not letting this get in. Because if people were to see this at this point in time, they would obviously probably start to reject the real ID more than they already are. But what you just said is not a fairy tale. It's not a guess. It's not maybe this will happen. This is already happening on mass scale in China, and people who just get deleted from the system are stuck on the streets, and then they just disappear as quick as they do in San Francisco.
Because at 2 a.m, there's a NATO soldiers come and round them up and take
Yeah.
them to a processing center where they'll be euthanized or they'll be vetted for re-education, brainwashing, or disposed of. And I think it really depends on your age. If you're an older person, they'll probably just euthanize you and cremate you. If you're a young person, they figure maybe get 10, 20 more years out of you. So it's worth indoctrinating you, which they can do by giving you drugs or e-medicine, e-pharmacy. They can, which is I did a video on it recently. It's a electric shock treatment. It's what they did to Ted Kaczynski. It's what they do at mental hospitals. They give you electric shock treatment between your two lobes,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a memory loss problem. There's collateral damage, but you can control. You can turn a person into a Manchurian candidate through electroshock treatments, ECT. Yeah. I think it's called ECT. Anyway, you can do that. You can use LSD. Or you can do both. You can use pharmacy and electroshock treatment. But today, with all the neuromodulation and all the ultrasonic weapons, the Ring cameras and the LED streetlights and the drones over our homes, that you have high platforms, and we have scintillation underground, scintillation above ground, cyclotronic machines, scintillation airplanes. They can literally do that with all people now. You and me, we can be given ECT therapy, electromagnetic therapy, and everyone is. So you can do it at a detention camp where you obviously get a higher dosage because, look, you and I are not really complying with their agenda. So next step would be go to a mental hospital, FEMA camp, a Donald Trump mental hospital, where we would be given, electroshock treatment and a high dose so that we could then fall in line with all the moron imbeciles who have already volunteered for cancer. They volunteered to get a real ID on their driver's license. They volunteered to get a digital passport at their bank. They volunteered to do the PCR test and to get the eyeball recognition at the airport. And they are stupid people. And stupid is as stupid does, to coin a phrase from a Hollywood film, Forrest Gump. Stupid is as stupid does. But I'm here to tell you, Josh, 99% of the planet Earth is really stupid. They're stupider than Stu Peters. They're stupider than Forrest Gump. They're stupid. So the commanders in Geneva, Switzerland, they're laughing. They're so proud of themselves because they know they've won. They've already had their victory party. They're high-fiving each other. They're doing the fist knockings because they won. They have convinced 99% of the planet that what you see on television is authentic and truthful. And that William Casey, the CIA director under Ronald Reagan, he even said, we know that the CIA's program is successful when 99% of America believes what's on television or in the newspapers.
I was just, the idea that you of shock is interesting because in trauma-based mind control monarch programming, I have heard from survivors that it's very common. They were to pick one spot on their body. Their handler would always have a taser. That would be the spot. They would be tased forever. And the idea was that anytime there was a trauma, a severe trauma, they would follow it up with a hit with a taser. And that would allow the memory to be pushed back into the mind. And that was a method that was always used to do the programming. Optogenetics is another thing that's I'm hearing about because I think there was an executive order to supposedly pull back as much restrictions as possible on optogenetics. So they really
there's no restrictions on optogenetics.
Did they get rid of them? Yeah.
No, it's full spectrum.
None at all. Yeah.
Steam ahead. There's no restrictions, period. Look, Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Did that stop the drug problem in America? Just say no. Josh, she said it.
No, it didn't. So I'm saying no.
And by the way, her name is Anne Frances Robbins. Everybody thinks she's Nancy Reagan. There's no such person as Nancy Reagan. On her birth certificate, it reads Anne Frances Robbins. So where did this Nancy Davis come from? Hollywood. So in other words, I have a fake first lady who says, just say no. And you're dumb enough to believe that I'm stopping the narcotics problem, which is a major pacification and control for NATO. And it's run by the mafia. And the mafia is different. They have a code of Omerta. Yeah, so do bankers. Guess what? I got news for you. The mafia is the bankers. The mafia runs Hollywood. The mafia runs the casino business. The mafia runs prostitution. The mafia runs child trafficking. Are you surprised? The mafia runs the Mormon church. The mafia runs the Catholic church. Most godfathers go to mass. They're Catholic. Tony Arcardo, Don Vito Corleone, Michael Corleone, they were Catholic.
Donate all of they tithe all their blood money to the diocese, and it gets laundered.
Because they don't own it. It's not their money. They have to. If they don't, someone's going to put a bullet in their head, right? It's not their money. None of this charity is legit. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it's not their money. It never was their money. The Swiss banks aren't going to give that much money to one Harvard dropout. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard. They're not even going to get a diploma. His admission letter is, bigger than most people's diploma. His admission to Harvard is probably 4 times larger than my university diploma is. Okay, university diploma is pretty big, but
Really?
when you are accepted to Harvard University, they have to hand carry it. It's in this ginormous. I know because a friend of mine was admitted to Harvard, and they say congratulations, you're the class of 2029. In other words, they assume you're going to accept, that we don't get too many rejections, and that you're going to graduate in this class. Having never sat in a classroom, having never taken an examination, they've already assumed that you're going to graduate in 4 years because you're going to say yes. It's a Faustian bargain. And then you're going to get a job somewhere within the Harvard alum ecosystem, which will take you to politics or to corporate law or to corporate banking or to private banking. Some really high-paying job you're going to get if you just say yes. And they deliver it they have a delivery man who delivers that to you because the mail service can't handle it. It's too big. It's a package. It's like 36 inches by 36 inches, really big, 3 feet by 3 feet. That's your acceptance letter. So Bill Gates has one of those, but he has no diploma. He never graduated. And so he doesn't have any, it's not his money.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting how these concepts that have been used now in networking and the as above, so below, these topics and subjects have been perfected on this lower individual level. And now they've discovered long ago that the same principles work on groups of people. They're usually just a little bit slower. But that's what they're doing with all of the machines as well. The mesh networking in humans, as we've talked about, is how all of the instructions in the secret societies and their brotherhoods propagate themselves. But that's now just being done with robotics and AI, and now humans being on the network, and it's very fascinating.
There are 2 principles I want everybody to buy into after watching this video. 2, only 2. It boils down to this. It's centralized control and power out of Switzerland. Most of that power is symbolized in Geneva. They have the most obelisks there. I think they have a minimum of 3 obelisks in Geneva. But you have an obelisk in your big city too, or multiple, like San Francisco does, or Dallas, Texas does, or Los Angeles does, or New York and Manhattan does. So the thing is that it's centralized control out of Switzerland. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we get along by going along under a pacification and control technique. And like I said, you don't treat your officers of your corporation the same way that you treat the people further down the trough, further along doing the dirty work, get their fingernails dirty. You use fear and petty privileges to manage the lower level, the serfs who work and then the middle managers, they have nicer housing provisions, nicer incomes, and they don't have to work as much overtime. And then as you move into the executive class, they actually have a certain amount of time they spend at private clubs, like the Harvard Club, the University Club, the Cattlemen's Club, the Pacific Union Club, the Bohemian Club, the Olympic Club, et cetera, the Jonathan Club, the Bankers Club, the World Trade Club, the Metropolitan Club for the wives. You have these private clubs that are golf oriented or hijinks oriented. And the people who work at the corporations are allowed to go to meetings and still get paid whilst they're attending a bankers club function or a World Trade Club function. So it becomes built into their position at their company. So
Mhm.
financially, they also meet other customers who they can do business with at the private clubs, where they can play golf or they can play dominoes or they can go on an overnight trip to the Bohemian Grove, for example, and in one of the little cabins there, they have camps, encampments. They have over 113 encampments at the Bohemian Grove, 2,700 acres. So what I'm saying is that it serves a purpose for them to be treated that way, and that is a way to control those people, is through their more upscale privileges. But you have the inverted style of pacification, control of terrorism and fear or losing their job at the lower ends of society, with the less indoctrinated people who didn't go to Harvard, didn't go to Princeton, didn't go to Yale, didn't go to Stanford. So you treat them differently. And yet it's the same policy, because at the top, everything's already decided, and they don't need any smart mouth Harvard MBA to tell them what to do.
Mhm.
They're telling, it's like the Godfather asking you for a favor. They expect you to carry out my favor exactly to a T. Like, my assistant here, Tom Hagen, will advise you as to who, where, what, and how,
Right.
and then you will do it. They're not asking Harvard MBAs or Stanford MBAs how to do it. They're telling them to do it. They don't care what your opinion is. They want your obedience. The captain's in charge and we follow orders. It's that simple. It's maritime law. The captain's in charge. Captain Quig's in charge of the cane, and he doesn't want any mutiny going on. And it was Captain Bligh who was in charge of the bounty. Mutiny on the bounty. I don't want to hear nothing about no mutiny on a bounty. Unlike you, Mr. Christian, I still have a country. You have forfeited your country by mutinizing the bounty. You did. He said those last words to Fletcher Christian, who initiated the mutiny on the bounty was initiated by Christian Spencer, and he said, "Unlike you, I still have a country." All
Interesting.
right. So that's the world that all the Harvard and all the Stanford and all the Princeton and all the Yaleys and all the Stanford creeps and all the Loyola, Marymount and University of San Francisco, Georgetown University, that's what they follow, is the captain's in charge and we follow orders. It's just that simple. They're all under that, and they get pretty good privileges for following that order. But it never ends differently for them. William Colby is an alumni of Princeton. They murdered him in his house at a number 13 address at Rock Point, Maryland, at the end of Hill Road, halfway through his dinner. And he was 76 years old, and they lights outed the former director of CIA, the head of the Phoenix program in Vietnam, and who worked for the Vatican in Rome, Italy, under Propaganda Due and the Red Brigade terrorism movements. There he is, William Colby, in Italy, doing the exact same things in Italy that he was doing in Vietnam, which is pacification control of the clueless, profane people, either of Italy or Vietnam. Matters not. And you can do it here in the United States too. You can do it in China. And they are. And they are. So everything that went on in Vietnam, everything that's going on in Italy, is going on in your neighborhood here in America. I mean, you should know that by now. Downtown Chicago, downtown San Francisco, downtown Los Angeles, West Hollywood, Seattle, Portland, parts of Manhattan are boarded up and empty. Thousands of businesses have gone out of business. We've turned our downtowns into ghettos and ghost towns. And we are bringing in tremendous amounts of immigrants from all over the world, because they're going to reset by 2030. And then you're going to have smart cities, and they will reopen all those businesses with real ID people who are 100% compliant. And you will have Indians and Asians living in San Francisco, Manhattan. That's who's going to be running America, is Indians and Asians dominantly. And everyone else is going to be in a Donald Trump Freedom City or in a cremation oven near you. Back to you, Josh. I think we should wrap it
I
up here.
was
We're up on 90 minutes now.
I was going to say, I think you wrapped it up really, really nicely. I plan to have a second kind of part on some of the stuff that I found to tie this all together, but I think this was brilliant. This is exactly the point that I wanted to draw. All of these topics are so connected; they are interconnected entities, and so this has been around forever. The tactics, the more they change, the more they stay the same. And I really appreciate you. You said everything I wanted to say. So,
Well,
guys,
I'm excited to do these shows with you, Josh, because we're doing content that is 10,000 times
uh,
higher quality than anything you'll see on Anthony
oh
Napolitano,
yeah,
Victor Davis Hanson, Jeffrey Sachs, Steve Bannon, Russell Brand, Bill Maher, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, Peter Thiel, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein. That's garbage. You just forget about those people. Lionel, his name is Michael LeBron. Call him what he is, an unfunny comedian, LeBron.
yeah. I
He
mean,
goes by Lionel because he's liar, liar, pants on fire. Stupider Peters, you do know he was born on April Fool's Day, right? And that's probably not his real name. If you put Stu and Peters together, you get stupider. Like, how stupid do you have to be to believe me? He's got tattoos all over his body. He's a Screen Actors Guild actor, rapper, and he's got a dead person. His partner's dead, and he went on a bail bondsman mission, and he killed the target. So you got three guys on a mission, two died, and only Stupiders is live to tell us what happened. And he's probably not telling you the whole story, right? And that's Jesse Ventura. That's Lionel Ventura. Lionel. And, that's Al Franken. That's Jesse Ventura. That's Minnesota military counterintelligence. Tyrell Ventura. That's Jesse Ventura's son. Tyrell. Jesse Ventura is a fake Navy SEAL, right? He's fake. He really is fake. He never went to action. He didn't go to Vietnam. He was a Navy SEAL during Vietnam. He never went to Vietnam. Why not? Because he's riding a motorcycle for the San Diego Mongols. Well, that's like you're working with Lino LaBianca and Joe Dorgan and Danny DiCarlo at the Venice Beach Straight Satans. In other words, Jesse Ventura is CIA. Got it? Navy
it's
intelligence.
just you're right, because in an hour and a half we've been able to sum up a very important topic, and I think it went really well. And it's just either these people don't care to expose it, they don't know how to put the topic together. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. It doesn't take anything crazily overcomplicated and extra to convey these topics. Really, you just need preferably two people, because dialogue helps, I think.
It does. Well, just remember all the people I mentioned, they're all under control. They have agents and art and repertoire reps. They're specifically told, don't go anywhere near these topics. I'm not going to be a guest on their shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like kryptonite is to Superman. I would disable all of them. They wouldn't be able to air the show.
Right.
So anyway, you and I are not in the club. We're not part of the big sandbox. We're shadow banned. So anyone listening to this, please do click on the link, copy and paste, and send it to someone else.
Yep.
Because we need to build our audience manually, brick by brick, one at a time. We don't have an infrastructure to pimp out and promote our show. All right, that's it for me. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for the. We'll get into the habit of doing that. Just to follow up on that, anybody is free to repost our content. Just leave a link back to the original or our channels, and you're free to do that. Please share it, make use of it. Happy to have that done. We do want to get everywhere, as many different platforms as possible, as many different people sharing as possible. So please hit the like button, follow us on whatever platform you're watching this on, and on Substack. The links will be in the description for both of us. But guys, thank you for tuning into this episode, and we will see you in the next time for episode 12. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, thumbs up. That was good. Yeah, can't get Bohemian Glow's too complicated a story to tell as part of the overall spin cycle.